He was the kind of person everyone liked, not because he stood out, not because he said anything memorable, but because he never made things difficult. He never said no, and that made everything easier for everyone else. No tension, no resistance, no discomfort. Just someone who would always go along with whatever was needed. And for a while, that felt like a good thing. Like he had found a way to keep life simple, to keep his mind quiet, to stay in control without ever having to confront anything uncomfortable. But then something started to feel off in a way he couldn't explain. Not all at once, just in small moments. Like when conversations moved past him without pause, when decisions were made around him instead of with him. When he was included, but somehow not really considered. And the more he paid attention, the harder it was to ignore, because the more he said yes, the less anyone seemed to notice him. And that was the part that didn't make sense. How being so easy to be around slowly made him someone people could live without. Someone who was always there, but never really chosen. And without realizing it, the very thing that made people like him had quietly made him invisible. It didn't feel like a decision at first, more like something that happened automatically. Someone asked for help, and he said yes. Plans changed, and he adjusted. Something felt inconvenient, and he brushed it off before it could turn into anything bigger. And over time, it became a pattern so familiar, he stopped noticing it, because saying yes made everything smoother. It avoided awkward moments, avoided disappointing anyone, avoided that subtle tension he never quite knew how to deal with. And in a strange way, it gave him a sense of control, like as long as he stayed agreeable. Nothing would fall apart. Nothing would turn uncomfortable. So he leaned into that version of himself. The one who didn't need much. The one who didn't mind. The one who was always okay, even when he wasn't really sure if he was. And the more he did it, the harder it became to tell whether he actually wanted to say yes, or if he just didn't know how to say no anymore, because every time he paused, even for a second, there was that quiet pressure in the back of his mind telling him it was easier to go along with it. Easier to keep things light, easier to stay the person everyone expected. Because at least that way, everything stayed calm, even if something underneath it didn't. At some point, it stopped feeling as simple as it used to, not in a way anyone else could notice. Just in small moments that stayed with him longer than they should have. Like when a conversation ended, and he kept replaying it in his head. Not because anything went wrong, but because something about it didn't feel right. Like he had been there, but not really part of it. And the more it happened, the harder it was to ignore. Because it wasn't just one moment. It was a pattern he couldn't fully explain. A quiet discomfort that followed him even after everything was over, and he tried to brush it off at first. Telling himself he was just overthinking, that he needed to calm down to stay in control. To not make something out of nothing, but that didn't make it go away. It just made it quieter on the outside and louder in his head. And suddenly, even the smallest interactions started to feel heavier than they should. Like saying yes didn't end when the moment passed. It stayed with him, looping back later when he was alone, making him question things he never used to question, like why he agreed so quickly. Why it felt easier to go along with something than to pause for even a second, and every time he noticed it. There was that brief moment where he could have said something different, where he could have slowed down, but instead he felt that familiar pressure, that quiet pull to keep things easy, to not complicate anything, to not risk changing how people saw him. And the more he gave into it, the more automatic it became, until saying yes didn't feel like a choice anymore. It felt like something that happened before he even had time to think. Like a pattern running in the background that he couldn't quite control, but couldn't stop either. And somewhere in that pattern, something about him was starting to feel less clear. Like he was still there, still showing up, still doing everything he always did. But not in the same way, not with the same sense of certainty, just moving through it. While something underneath it kept asking a question he didn't know how to answer. It didn't happen all at once. It showed up in ways that were easy to overlook at first. Like how people stopped asking and just assumed he would say yes. How small favors slowly turned into expectations. How can you help? Became you'll take care of it. And he went along with it like he always did. But something about it felt different now. Not louder, just harder to ignore. Because it wasn't just what people were doing, it was what they had stopped doing. They stopped checking if he was okay with it. Stopped waiting for his answer. Stopped seeing him as someone who had a choice. And the more it happened, the more it became clear and quiet. Uncomfortable ways, like being in a group where decisions were made without him but still affected him. Or agreeing to something and realizing no one would have noticed if he wasn't there at all. And that was the part that stayed with him. Not anger, not frustration, just that subtle realization that he had become predictable. Someone people could rely on without ever really thinking about. Someone who was always included but never actually considered. And over time, that feeling started to settle in. Not all at once, but gradually, like something fading, where he was still present in every moment, but less visible in each one. Like the more he tried to be easy to be around, the easier it became for people to overlook him. And without realizing it, he wasn't just being taken for granted. He was becoming someone who could be replaced without anyone needing to explain why. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a small moment most people wouldn't even notice, like being there while everything moved around him. Conversations shifting, decisions made, laughter passing through the room without ever really landing on him. And he did what he always did. Stayed quiet, nodded, went along with it. But this time, something didn't feel the same. Not louder, not heavier, just clearer. Like for a second, he stepped outside of it and saw what had been happening all along. Not them, but himself. How easily he had stepped back without even thinking. How quickly he made space for everyone else while slowly removing himself. And that was when it finally made sense. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to be undeniable that nothing about this was random. Nothing about being ignored or overlooked was surprising, because he had been showing people exactly how to treat him. Every time he said yes without meaning it, every time he chose comfort over honesty, every time he made himself smaller just to keep things easy. And in that moment, it wasn't about blaming anyone. It wasn't even about regret. Just a quiet realization that had been building for a long time. That he hadn't been losing people the way he thought. He had been losing himself first. Nothing really changed the next day, at least not in a way anyone else would notice. He still showed up, still listened, still found himself in the same situations where it would have been easier to say yes. But something about it felt different now, like there was a small pause that hadn't been there before. A moment where he could see what he was about to do instead of just doing it automatically. And it wasn't uncomfortable the way he expected. It was quieter than that, almost clear. Like he was finally aware of the pattern instead of being inside it. And the strange part was the overthinking didn't feel as loud anymore. Not because he tried to stop it, but because something underneath it had shifted. Like he didn't need to keep everything calm just to feel okay. And he didn't suddenly become someone different. Didn't have a perfect answer. Didn't fix everything overnight. But he understood something he hadn't before, that maybe it was never about saying yes or no. Maybe it was about the way he had learned to disappear just to be accepted. And once he saw that, even slightly, it was hard to unsee. Like a quiet kind of clarity that didn't solve everything, but changed the way everything felt.